Bantam Doubleday Dell Audio Publishing presents The Other Side of the River by Alex Kotlowitz. The body. This much is not in dispute. On Wednesday, May 22nd, 1991, at the day's first light, a flock of seagulls noisily abandoned their perches along the two cement piers jutting into Lake Michigan. Like rambunctious school children, they playfully circled above the mouth of the St. Joseph River here in southwestern Michigan, absorbing the warmth of the new day's sun. The seas were calm, the sky partly cloudy. Almost exactly 1 hour later, first-year Coast Guard seaman Paul Brignoni, hosing down a concrete walkway alongside the river, teasingly shot a blast of water at a covey of seagulls resting on the embankment and spotted what appeared to be a muddy strip of driftwood floating 20 yards from where he stood. Minutes later, he received a cryptic radio call from the crew of a nearby dredging boat. "We got something out here you might want to take a look at." Brignoni and two colleagues pushed off in their 22-foot Boston whaler, and on closer inspection discovered that the flotsam was the bloated body of a fully clothed teenage black boy. Using a 7-foot-long boat hook, they carefully prodded the discolored corpse onto a large metal litter, turning their heads to avoid the putrid gases that rose from the body, along with the early morning mist from the river. Then they motored back to shore, where they laid the body face down on the wooden deck by their barracks and doused it with a nearby hose, cleansing it of some of the river silt. 3 St. Joseph police officers soon arrived. While 2 asked questions of the Coast Guardman, making certain to stay upwind of the body, the 3rd officer circled the corpse like a buzzard over its prey, snapping pictures with a 35mm camera. After getting shots of the boy's short-sleeved shirt, a blue-striped baseball jersey that read McGinnis, Detective Dennis Socek had his fellow officers carefully turn the body over. He knelt to get close-ups, focusing on the dead boy's stone-washed, used jeans, a popular brand which were unbuckled and unzipped, exposing blue-striped bikini shorts. He snapped shots of the victim's upper body, the arms and hands still caked with mud, the skin yellowish, almost green in places, was scraped away on the left forearm. He took photos of the boy's head, which was so swollen that the face looked separated from the skull, as if someone had stuffed cotton in the cheeks, the chin, the forehead, and every other part of the head. Only the ears retained their normal size, and in proportion to the other features seemed small and insignificant. The red lips puckered out like a fish's, and there were marks around the neck, 2 bloody lines that looked like rope burns. There were other matters the camera caught as well, a silver ring with a turquoise stone, a pinky fingernail painted pink, and unlaced high-top Nikes. Nearby, Jim Daglish, a weedy-looking reporter for the Herald Palladium, the local newspaper, turned his eyes from the scene, his worn Nikon hanging around his neck. Daglish, who, like other reporters at the small paper, doubled as a photographer, had heard over the police radio about a floater in the river and had sped over in his pickup. Drownings are common occurrences around here, sometimes as many as 3 to 4 a year. The area, after all, is surrounded by water. The St. Joseph River slices through the county, its languid surface hiding a sometimes tricky current. And just 200 yards downstream from the Coast Guard station, the St. Joseph empties into Lake Michigan, which at times can rise up in a fury, whipping 8 to 10-foot swells onto the 2 piers. The force of those waves has swept fishermen and foolhardy teens into roiling water where even the strongest of swimmers have a difficult time staying afloat. Daglish, who hadn't the stomach to look at the puffed-up bodies of floaters, only glanced at this particular corpse. He did snap some photos after it was placed on an ambulance stretcher, a white sheet covering it from head to toe. The body was taken to Mercy Hospital for an autopsy. The incident was, the police believed, probably a drowning. Like a swollen snake, the St. Joseph River lazily winds its way north from Indiana through the hilly cropland of southwestern Michigan, eventually spilling into the clear waters of Lake Michigan, where it is 450 feet across at its widest. It is here, near its mouth, that this otherwise undramatic chute of water becomes a formidable waterway, not because of its currents, but because of what it separates, Benton Harbor and St. Joseph, Two small Michigan towns whose only connections are two bridges and a powerful undertow of contrasts. South of the river on a hill sits St. Joseph, a modest town of 9,000 that resembles the quaint tourist haunts of the New England coast. Vacationers on their way from Chicago, it's a 2-hour drive, to the northern woods of Michigan stop here to browse the downtown mall, shopping at the antique stores, art galleries, and clothing boutiques. Its beach, just a short walk down a steep bluff from downtown, once boasted an amusement park, but, reflecting today's more environmentally conscious world, now stands bare, its acres of fine sand and protected dunes luring families and idle teens during the summer months. The town is made up of both blue-collar families and professionals, many of whom work at the international corporate headquarters of Whirlpool, one of the area's major employers. In recent years, they have been joined by affluent Chicagoans looking for second homes. For those in Benton Harbor, though, St. Joseph's most defining characteristic is its racial makeup. It is 95% white. Benton Harbor lies just across the river. It is a larger town with a population of 12,000, and although technically speaking it is the other sibling in the much-used name the Twin Cities, it couldn't be more different from St. Joseph. Benton Harbor is 92% black, and it is dirt poor. It is, as a result, shunned by the citizens of St. Joseph, whose children are taught from an early age that they are not to venture into Benton Harbor because of the gangs and the drugs. A state legislator once publicly warned visitors to lock their doors when driving through the city's downtown, whose empty movie theaters, potholed streets, and vacant stores stand as an inverted image of the mall across the way. And it is suggested from time to time that the local airport, just north of Benton Harbor, should be relocated so that visitors wouldn't have to drive through the wreckage of the town to get to St. Joseph. For the people of St. Joseph, Benton Harbor is an embarrassment. It's as if someone had taken an inner-city neighborhood. Indeed, the typical family income is 1/4 that in St. Joseph, and plopped it in the middle of this otherwise picturesque landscape. A further reminder of the relentless differences was put forward in 1989, when Money magazine anointed the Benton Harbor metropolitan area, which includes St. Joseph, the worst place to live in the nation. Everyone, of course, blamed Benton Harbor for the rating. It is here where the St. Joseph River opens into Lake Michigan, providing sustenance for spawning salmon and seasoned sailors, that this story begins, and it is here, at the beginning, where people began to disagree. A Prelude. My interest in the death of Eric McGinnis borders on obsession. I've come to realize this after conducting over 200 interviews, after scouring countless times the 6-inch-thick police report, after listening to the opinions and reasoning offered by forensic pathologists, toxicologists, homicide detectives, and civil engineers, after navigating the St. Joseph River, after hanging out in bars and on basketball courts, and after playing and replaying in my mind the last moments when Eric was seen alive. Eric, at least what I knew of him, called to mind the friendships I've been lucky to forge over the years, relationships I treasure. I've known teens like Eric who, in the throes of adolescence, can be marvelously engaging and formidably beguiling. And so my obsession may be explained in part by my familiarity with the terrain. Eric's death stirred me. I thought perhaps I could restore some dignity to another faceless name and help put closure on the mystery surrounding his death. I wasn't prepared, however, for the sudden and precipitous shifts in the landscape. The terrain wasn't as familiar as I'd thought. I never knew Eric, nor did I know his family or friends until after his death, but the 3x5 color snapshots of his bloated body haunt me, one photo in particular, in which his arms are splayed at his side at awkward, impossible angles, one wrist turned away from his body, almost as if he had died trying to mock the body-bending acrobatics of a contortionist. I flinch at the image of his battered face, which, because of the decomposition and its ballooning, seems without form or character. When I close my eyes and conjure up that photo, what I see most clearly is the single blade of grass along Eric's left cheek, extending just above one eye. It is as if the camera had focused on that at the exclusion of his features. Everything else is a blur. His eyes, set deep in their sockets, his hair caked in mud.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?